Yeah, connected.
Welcome to
There
Bharat
seems
Vichar.
to be internet no slow here.
Today we are joined again by Arshia Malik. She is an educator, blogger.
Besides,
Give me a minute. We seems to be having some technical difficulty with Arshia, and she's having some problem with her internet. Anyway, today's discussion is about why reformers in Islam are called heretics, and we are going to be discussing.
can you hear me? Can you hear me? Am I audible and visible?
Audible and now visible, but can't see your face.
Uh, your voice is breaking, Balaji.
Can you hear me now?
Your vo-
Are you able to hear me? Are you able to hear me now? Hello? Hello? I think we are having some trouble with our internet, some latency. Anyway, as I was saying, the subject of our discussion is why reformers in Islam are often called or have always been called heretics. And a while back, uh, Arshia and well, I think she's back. Yeah, now I think you're back. Anyway, I had to keep talking to, namaste.
Namaste.
I'm going to drop the pleasantries because I already did that.
Right. I'm
But
so
anyway,
sorry. The net connection
no,
is
no,
weak here.
there are certain things
Yes,
which are beyond our control. So let's not worry
yes.
about that.
It's technology.
Anyway, I was saying that why in Islam
Ah,
reformers are called heretics. And a while back, you and I were having this discussion on this matter, and we decided that let's talk about that in open. That
mhm.
you said that there are no reformers. Then I was in disagreement. Then I said that I think there have been reformers, but the problem was that they were deemed as heretics, and they got somehow.
Let me clear.
Ex-
Let me clear it.
yeah,
First of all, heresy is somebody heretic is somebody who's against a popular opinion. His opinions or her opinions are against the general mainstream opinion, right? The heretic could be a believer also.
yeah,
Mansur al-Hallaj, right, was not an atheist. He was a believer, right? But he was so much into God that he eventually proclaimed he's God, right? Anna al-Haq, I'm the truth, I am God, which was again misinterpreted, and we know the result. He was executed. So a heretic can be a believer. A heretic can be an atheist, agnostic. There are so many kinds. Reformers also come in many categories. Now, reformers are not only Muslim reformers. Reformer is somebody who stands up against dowry in society. Reformer is somebody who wants to reform society of all its social evils, right? We have this huge problem of child trafficking, women trafficking in India. We have this problem of domestic violence. We have this problem of false cases against men, right? False dowry cases. Anybody speaking up against it is a reformer, right? Now, why it is sensational that there is somebody or something called a Muslim reformer? It's sensational because everybody, the Muslim community believes that it's a perfect religion. There is no flaw in it. The holy book is perfect. Everything is perfect. The prophet was perfect. So that's where all the problems come from. When you are conditioned into this mentality that everything is fine with us. So what does a heretic do? If he or she focuses on the hypocrisy, on the denial, on the certain truths which are hidden, right? Or they are apologized away, right? Like 9/11 is apologized away, 26/11 is apologized away. And somehow it's always leftists, or it's somehow always Liberals, I don't know what to call them now. I used to call them fibrils, not exactly liberals, because we have this cultural relativism. It's a postmodern concept, cultural relativism. All cultures are equal. Okay?
Well,
So let me clear that.
yeah,
Heretic can be a believer also. Nawal al Sadawi, she died recently, Egyptian reformer.
yeah,
She was
doctor.
heretic because her all her books are against the popular opinion. I mean, she till her death she managed to piss off feminists equally as well as Islamists. Right? Look
Yeah,
at the kind of life she's lived. Never got any acceptance in Egypt, her own home country. But her books are translated all over the world in all languages. Okay,
yeah.
so this is basic difference: heresy and reformation.
But the thing is that a lot of people say that there have never been any attempt uh, to reform Islam. And again, we had a slight disagreement in that. But my belief is that there have always been people who have stood against the tide of popular opinion.
See, in my
Ibn
opinion,
Rashid comes to my mind.
in my opinion, the Prophet was the first reformer. There were some things which were going wrong in old Arabia, which I'm sure he stood up against. One was this very barbaric thing of burying daughters in the sand. अनफॉर्चुनेटली वो प्रथा आज भी है. अब सिर्फ सैंड में भरी नहीं होती है. हमारा फीटिसाइड का जो स्टेटिस्टिक है बहुत ही हाई है. यू नो
Is it high
I
in
think he
Saudi
was a
Arabia?
first. I think he was a first reformer, but as it happens with every theology or
Your
every philosophy or every theory,
Arshia,
it
I'm sorry,
develops
your
around
voice.
a.
You'll have to
Uh,
repeat. I'm sorry, your internet connection
okay,
was had gone bad. So if you could
am
kindly,
I clear
yeah,
now?
now it's fine.
Huh.
Thank you. Go ahead.
I think, in my opinion, the Prophet was the first reformer. There were many barbaric practices in pre-Arabia, old Arabia, and especially daughters being buried in sand. This, of course, it's still true today, except we don't bury them in sand. Female feticide is very high. Statistics are very high. But anyway, for me, he was the first reformer. But as it happens in history, hota hai with every theology, every philosophy, every theory, a cult develops, around the personality of the person who initially uh, brought it up. It can be said the same for Christianity, developed into a cult. Can be said the same about Judaism. Can be said the same about many other religions, right? The thing is that you have to accept the fact that the cult personality or the prophet might not have been perfect, right? So that's where reform comes in. You have to give space to the fact something is not right in the religion. Whether it is in twisted interpretations of verses, whether it is religious sanction of wife beating, again, whether the mullahs are deliberately trying to instigate the ummah against complete civilizations, all of this comes under reform, right? But I think, Balaji, you're confused in this, that what you often refer to the 12th century Baghdad and what you say they were reformers. I think you have to understand the fact that with the changing times, eventually in the medieval period, a Muslim renaissance did happen. It did happen. There was a Muslim enlightenment. I don't call it the golden age of Islam, which is a misnomer again, because as now, even then, they did not allow people access to certain manuscripts or certain documents or certain theories, which could be, against the popular opinion. It was heresy. It was blasphemy. So to call it completely as a perfect golden age of Islam, I don't agree. But yes, there was a Muslim enlightenment. There were thinkers who were bringing up ideas which would be definitely against the public opinion, but they had patronage from the Caliph, the highest authority, right? Who was also the commander of the faithful. He was taking care of the whatever centers they were. Like there are two centers eventually. So you need to understand this. You can't call a Muslim astronomer in that period or a Muslim scientist or a Muslim mathematician as a reformer. Do you understand how the language is incorrect here? uh, they were just like Galileo. They were coming up with certain ideas which was not popular. People did not want to accept it, and thankfully, the Caliph who had built Caliph Al Mamun built the House of Wisdom, and he believed that all ideas can be discussed. Right, there was no censorship or anything, and hence we have a whole lot of you could say heretic thinkers, a whole lot of scientists, astronomers, mathematicians. What today would be called as blasphemy. You have all of these flourishing for decades, for probably more than a century, especially
There was,
Spanish, Moorish Spain,
yeah,
right?
there was a
Huh.
period
So
of around
these
150 years.
so these certain people who should have been in our textbooks and in our curriculum and should have been on the tip of our tongue, like Avicenna, Western people call him Avicenna. It's Ibn Sina.
Ibn
Uh,
Sina,
uh, so many Ibn Rushd, right?
Ibn Rushd,
Averroes, right?
Averroes.
They should have been our role models. They should have been, but you never get to hear it. You only get the rightly guided caliphs who were all about war and other things. Uh, for me, that's what basically is. There is a whole lot of history which is hidden. There's a whole lot of history which is suppressed, and that history needs to come out. Because I eventually
Uh,
believe that whatever problems there are in Islam are going to go away once this critical thinking is encouraged. Because we did have it in medieval times, we did, and with state patronage, we did have it.
that's why I want to discuss about the Muttazilites. They were
Mhm.
flourishing in the Abbasid Caliphate during the, I think, 11th or 12th century, if memory serves.
Hmm.
During that period of time, give or take 50 years here and there. So I want you to talk about those Muttazilites who believe that there is something called reason over text. It's three words: reason over text, and that would have scared the hell out of lot of people. I mean, their jobs would be at jeopardy, and how it started and
Well,
how it eventually ended. If you can talk about
well,
that.
the reasoning over text, well, would scare anybody in any civilization, right? Even today, reasoning scares the hell out of a lot of people even today. Anyway, please understand this. It was not just one moment. When you have a flourishing civilization, okay, and it was not that bad. You had, I again tell you, if you take out the religion part of it from the Islamic civilization, there is a whole part which is beautiful, beautiful architecture, beautiful cuisines, beautiful music, beautiful poetry. Poetry is the best, one of the best. There's a whole lot of redeeming things in Islamic civilization, right? And when a civilization flourishes, there are different ideas, different strains of philosophy or theology which come up. So, along with the Mutazalite movement or the Mutazalites, there were the Asharites also. Asharites used to believe in text over reasoning. They believed the holy book was all, the be all and the end all. The prophet's hadith, whatever has come out, tradition stories about the prophet are the be all and the end all. The Sira, the Sunnah, everything, and that's when the Sharia had started to eventually formulate. It had not become ossified as yet, but formulate. So the Caliph allowed even them, but eventually fanaticism is recognized. So maybe the Caliph must have recognized that the Asharites were close to being fanatics, that they were not allowing different opinions. And the mistake that the Caliph made was to imprison the one of the most important preachers of the Asharite movement. And I think he was tortured in prison. And eventually, because of his injuries, he was martyred after he was released. I mean, he died, so he became a martyr for the Asharites.
I think there is a school
That's the
of
whole.
I think there's a school of thoughts behind that particular Islamic leader. I think
Even in the
Hanbali.
Asharites, even among the Asharites, you have different sects, different strains and all. Even among the Mutazalites, you had different strains and different sects. So there were a whole lot of ideas developing. They had Greek influence. They were eventually discovering Persia also. There was a whole lot of original thing happening. Trade ho raha tha, even though it was slow. and ideas love to have that kind of environment, the slow kind of environment, the Silk Road kind of environment, where the ideas take months to come and by the time they formulate. अभी ऐसे जैसे आज का है, इंस्टेंटली आपको टाइम भी नहीं मिलता सोचने पे एंड एकदम रिएक्शन होता है, ऐसा नहीं था मिडिल एजेस में. सो पीपल यूज्ड टू टेक देयर टाइम टू फॉर्मुलेट थिंग्स एंड अदर स्टफ.
Maybe that
That's
was a
what
good
you
thing
need to
actually.
understand. There was this space given to everything, whether it was reasoning over text or whether it was text over reasoning, and different other sects as well, different other schools of thought. But the problem occurred, what we call as the intellectual suicide that the Muslim community committed in the 12th century, is that the Assurite movement was encouraged and developed. I think because of this mistake by the Caliph, making a martyr out of a preacher. And of course, जैसे होता है, the fanatics grew. They drew more people because a certain injustice had been done, and eventually the Ashurites started persecuting the Mutazilites. So persecution की best story Avi Sena की ही है, Ibn Sina, where he was living, and his manuscripts, his disciples had to smuggle it out eventually. So there's a whole lot of stories that Muslims are never taught, and this intellectual suicide is something that we're still paying for. That's why my reform is about bringing back the Mutazalit thought, the school of thought, reasoning over text. The text is not perfect. The text is by human hand. It may have had divine inspiration, but then, as occurs with everything, there are certain interpretations which are wrong. There are certain things which might have been inserted. There are certain things which might have been expunged. We don't know. So it's incorrect to say it's a perfect thing. We can make
Uh,
it perfect if we
yeah.
make changes and accept realistic adaptations. I think that's what the reform is all about, right?
Yeah, I personally feel that what probably happened was that after the four caliphs had passed away, and
The rightly guided, you have to distinguish
rightly
them.
guided, the
Rightly guided,
Rashidins,
the Rashidun.
Rashiduns, Rashiduns, and then slowly the Muslims started moving towards east, say Persia and all that. And these are old civilizations where there was a practice of reason over text. They were also coming in contact with the Byzantinians, where there is study of philosophy. Although at that time even they had gone a bit dark because of Christianity. However, literature did exist, and they were able to come across some of these books and all. And obviously, I feel that when it comes to science, maths, and astronomy, there was a huge influence from India, where because of the trade and I think at that point of time, 712, the invasion had already
I
started.
get, I get
So
this
I,
a lot.
I feel that what happens is that when you move out of that particular area where the religion has originated and you go someplace else, new ideas started coming in, and that leads to people questioning certain things, and new logics emerge and new thought process emerge. And because to say that, when people say that, oh, Islamic architecture, the point of the matter is that in Arabia there was no such thing as architecture. When Persia was invaded and Baghdad was invaded, there were people who were already engineers who were there, who had converted, and then they took it forward. I mean, again, it's as I said, it's one of my let's just say call thinking.
May I
I
come in
could be
now?
wrong.
May I come in now?
No, I'll just finish my point in 30 seconds. So what I feel is that as Islam started to expand and started coming in contact with various cultures and civilizations, new ideas started to pour in, and it took time. As I said, during the Mutazilite, I think it was the 12th century AD. So the study of Aristotle, Socrates, and then study of astronomy, alchemy, medicine. So these things started to come in, and I'm sure Ibn Sana, if somebody would have told him that the sun sets in some swamp or something like that. I think there is something in the hadith that the sun sets in the swamp and all. I don't think Ibn Sina would have bought that logic, and his scientific reasoning would have been much more evolved for that period. So I feel that when you go to new places and you meet new people, slowly new ideas starts to emerge. That's what I feel. Please.
I think you're wrong on most of the points. I'll tell you what. First of all, please understand the expansion of Islam. Please understand the advent of Islam. Before Islam, there was no unity among the tribal nations. They were just tribes. There was no nation. There was no statehood. You have to give credit to the fact that the Prophet brought them all together under one banner. That's the Ummah, right? Now, today, Ummah has become a very derogatory word. It shouldn't, because try and understand the desert conditions of those days. The Bedouins had their own kind of law. Every tribe had their own laws, had their own way of handling things, injustice, which was mostly barbaric, right? And you have to give credit to the fact, to the point, to the Prophet for bringing them all together. And you have to read Islam with an open mind. Uh, when the first mosques started developing, when the first four rightly guided caliphs, even though they were beset by wars and everything, okay, agreed, but at the same time, they were also looking after the fledgling community. It was coming up. And the Ummah concept is basically, just I have often said, zakat is a very redeeming factor of Islam, right? Uh, Taking care of orphans and infirm elders and women. This has been reiterated by the Prophet, especially in his last sermon, right? Please look at it from open mind. This was the first time the tribes were told that the women were also important, that they were not to be used as cattle, that even slaves had rights, right? So you have to give credit to the fact a desert area which had no unity whatsoever. People were doing whatever they wanted, had come together, formulated laws, formulated a kind of statehood, formulated a certain system, right? Expansion is always part of something which develops, whether it is by sword or proselytization. I agree with one thing of yours, that yes, as they come in contact with other civilizations, there are ideas. But then think of it. Eventually, the architecture did come up. Even
It did.
if, say, for example, they and this is very wrong to say. I don't know. There is a trend happening these days. They keep telling me or other people कि they had inspiration from, I'll say, Hind, because उनके लिए तो वो Hind था. And I don't say it's impossible. Of course, some ideas might have gone there, but please understand, the Islamic, the golden age, the Islamic science, it has had influence from the Greeks. It's an established fact. Western medieval age was in the dark ages. They had lost the Greek knowledge. It was found by Arabic philosophers and translators. Had they not translated it and then given it back eventually, not given it, when the West discovered the East, what is called the Crusades, very deadly period. But at the same time, these ideas were also being given back to the West when they understood, Socrates and Pythagoras and all of this. So, ये मुझे बड़ा ऑड लगता है कि हर पॉइंट पे एवरीबडी इज ट्राइंग टू डू दीज डेज कि हिंद से लिया है, हिंद से लिया है. हिंद वाज अ ग्लोरियस सिविलाइजेशन. We have Aryabhatta who gave the zero and all, understand that. But then to attribute everything to Hind is kind of, it seems silly to me. Look at the geography of the region. Look at the geography of the region. Their first contact would have been the Byzantine Empire. Their first contact would have been, Piche, the whatever was of the Russian Empire at that time. Their first contact would have been the Greeks. Their first contact would have been the Europeans. Considering that there was a Silk Route which was all land, I'm talking about 1100s. There was no maritime exploration as yet.
No, maritime, we had lost the maritime skill. What I was saying is that basically when you expand and you come in contact with people of other, say, religion, and even if those people convert to Islam, they're going to bring in certain facets of their culture, certain facets of their practices.
Yes.
I mean, yes. nowhere in the Quran or the Hadith. I mean, I'm not an expert. I have not studied the Quran. I'm just making a very educated guess here. Forgive me if I'm wrong. And I don't think I am. This practice of female genital mutilation, It's not mentioned anywhere. I don't know. God knows where it came from. Probably a
It's a
cultural
cultural
practice.
practice.
Cultural
It's a
practice.
cultural
So
practice in
on
Africa
that
which
basis,
predates Islam. It's a cultural practice. It came from pagan religions, and somehow the people have attributed it to an Islamic ritual, which is not there. It predates Islam. It's basically African. It's spread over to other regions, and I don't know. There's some. I need to research it yet. I'm still researching it. What could have made it into modern ritual?
it's
Predates
from
Islam. It's a
it's
cultural
from
thing. It
yeah, yeah.
came from pagan
It's
religions.
from East
Uh,
Africa. It's
uh,
from East Africa.
yeah, but let me tell you one thing. Everybody thinks that literature only came in Arabia or the desert regions after Islam came. I mean, this is even the Muslims who say this. Like Quran jab tak nahi aaya, tab tak aisa kuch bhi nahi tha. Arey, there is pre-Islamic poetry, excellent poetry, which now the thinkers and the writers and the translators are. They did have a culture. The Bedouin culture was there. It was mostly oral, but you can't just dismiss a culture. There must have been indigenous
I will say
there must
something
have been
on that.
indigenous cultures also,
No, no,
right?
I will say something on that. In fact, there were poets who would, professionals. They would write satire, poetry as a form of satire, and
Absolutely.
it could. I mean, there was one poem written regarding that incident with Aisha when she got left behind, and people were actually writing poetry at that point of time, and someone wrote a poet and then a poem, and so to say that, nothing
and
existed.
and people need to remember also that the Arabian Nights is a compilation of pre-Islamic stories, a much freer society, right? A much more, you could say, loose society where it didn't have much of moral or ethical values, uh, according to modern standards, right? According to modern standards, if you see that society today from the modern lens, it would have been, we would have been shocked at what all was there. But it's those times. I mean, it was a much freer society, much more hedonistic. So when Islam comes in, of course, it brings in its puritanical, ideas and puritanical laws, and then we think, yes, there is a pre-Islamic barbaric time, and then there is an Islamic, very civilized time. तो ये कॉन्सेप्ट जो लोगों के दिमाग में है, ये हटाना है, एंड ये हटा रहे हैं. देयर आर मेनी रिसर्चर्स जो इस एरिया में जाते हैं, स्पेशली फातिमा मरनसी, शी इज दिस स्कॉलर. देन देयर आर अदर पीपल हु आर डूइंग इट. Western authors are doing it, even Arabic authors have done it, even Egyptian authors are doing it. Middle East में बहुत लोग इस पे रिसर्च करते हैं, काम करते हैं. But again, they don't bring focus to their work, because again, it's dangerous to even touch the idea that before Islam there was a certain kind of culture, which was, of course, it was there, and not to judge it by modern standards. Even to bring up this idea is very dangerous. It will come in the area of blasphemy. It will come in the area of shirk. It will come in the area of many things.
Anything.
uh,
I'll just end this particular part with one thing that, let's not forget, Muhammad's first wife was a accomplished businesswoman who ran a successful business empire. So let's just leave it at that. I think then. So now, as I said,
no. People need to understand that
no, people need to
if you're being
understand that.
objective, you
So
have to
one has to be
understand that
objective.
the Prophet was married to one woman until her death. There were no 3 or 4 wives. He was very faithful to her to the end, and this is something Aisha was very jealous of, right? If you have the new books coming up.
Yeah.
Secondly, you also have to admit to the fact that she was an accomplished businesswoman. If we see it by modern standards, she proposed. She was older than him. She was a widow. Three things जो आज भी modern जमाने में औरतें नहीं कर पाती हैं. She was a widow. She chose her own husband. She proposed to him. I would say very
So
dynamic and
it's a
revolutionary
paradox.
woman.
No, it's a paradox. Let's just leave it at that. It's a
And
paradox.
she was handling
Yeah.
that trade, and she trusted him because he was known as Al Amin, the trustworthy, never lied. उस जमाने में भी जैसे people would very word of mouth से होता था, the promises made, and trade में जैसे आज भी गुजरात में जो diamond merchants हैं उनका वो कहते हैं ना, जुबान ही काफी होती है. So that's why she trusted him. So they were, I mean, great couple. He was faithful to her to the end, not expected in those times. And
I
then when he had the first revelation, according to legend, she was the first person he told to, and she encouraged him to explore it further, and took him to a Christian monk, I think it was, or a Christian holy man. And he also kind of said, yes, in the Bible it says something. These are the legends which have come to us. But I would say lot of new research is going into it. There are books being written about Khadija, and you have to understand the fact that if she was accomplished in those times, then the women were not as
backward.
repressed as it's made out to be. But yes, this barbaric practice of burying daughters was there. So I think it was
Uh,
very necessary for
I,
Islam to come in there.
I think
His whole life, his whole sermon and everything, which is something that we look up to, not the hadith
no,
which
no.
came later, but the
That's why.
sermon and everything which has been taken down, because it was a very important part. The last sermon keeps reiterating that you have to take care of the women and the orphans. That's the
Uh,
that
yeah,
happens every other hadith talks about taking care of the weak, the infirm, the men, the
actually,
women and the children
yeah,
and the orphans.
I would
Even
have to
in
stop.
battle, there is a certain ethic that you're not going to harm the women, that you're not going to harm the children, or you're not going to harm anybody who doesn't carry
No,
arms. ये तो आज का
actually,
मॉडर्न भी है, unarmed
actually,
man को आप harm नहीं कर सकते.
no,
So
actually, those are old.
objectively, you
Those
have
are
to look
ancient
at
rules.
Islam objectively.
No,
If
no,
you think you'll bash it all the time, I am not for it.
no, no.
ऑब्जेक्टिवली देखें उसको, खुद भी
As
फिर
I,
बिटवीन द लाइंस पढ़ के समझ के लॉजिकली अप्लाई करके देखें कि उस टाइम पे वो एक आना था. ही वाज द फर्स्ट रिफॉर्मर, बट इवेंचुअली जैसे हर पर्सनालिटी के साथ होता है, एक सर्टन वो कल्ट डेवलप होता है, एंड वो हाईजैक हो जाता है. एवरीथिंग गेट्स हाईजैक.
okay.
It can't
Yeah,
just happen. It doesn't
I,
happen in science. Einstein's theory cannot be hijacked. Even if it was
no, no.
hijacked,
Arshia,
Stephen Hawking built on it, and hopefully अच्छे के लिए ही होता है. साइंस में अगर चीजें हाईजैक हो जाती हैं, लेकिन रिलीजन में प्रॉब्लम है कि अगर कोई अच्छी चीज किसी ने बनाई है, वो इवेंचुअली हाईजैक होती है. कितने लोग मुझे गारंटी से कह सकते हैं कि गुरु नानक जी ने जो, again another great reformist and wonderful debater, जो थोड़ा बहुत मैंने उनकी स्टोरी सुनी है about God, and there's this incident about turning his feet away from the Kaaba and telling the mullah, okay, मेरे पांव उस तरफ करिए जहां पे God नहीं है. I think that's a wonderful retort. But लेकिन कितने लोग मुझे गारंटी देते हैं कि आज जो सिखिज्म है, which is again the most safest religion and the best at this time because of its this helpful attitude toward everybody, लेकिन कितने लोग वो एक्चुअली प्रैक्टिस कर रहे हैं जो उन्होंने एडिक्ट्स दिए हैं? हाउ मेनी पीपल डू एक्चुअली फॉलो व्हाट द गुरुज से? Because there are problems there also, right? There are problems there too. If you pick up Punjab,
Arshia,
if I see
Arshia, if I may,
what is happening with the women, एक बहुत ही
Arshia,
सिमिलर किस्म का ट्रिपल तलाक जैसा चीज हो रहा था
Arshia, are
वहाँ
you
पे.
able to hear me?
These women were getting married to these Canadians, for the green card and everything, and then वहाँ पे जाके उनका बहुत ज्यादा.
That has
I think there's a
that
movie,
has
very powerful movie
no, no.
about this by Aishwarya
Yeah,
Rai,
yeah.
right?
If,
So
if
you
I
have
may,
to
if
see
I
Islam objectively. I am
no,
not going to stand for bigotry, or I'm not going to stand for any bias or prejudice. Look at it openly. There are flaws there, yes, but then there are certain things which are redeeming as well.
I'm gonna have
Yes.
to stop you there. Actually, I
I
wanted to
can't
stop
hear
you
you.
2 minutes.
I
You
can't
can't
hear
hear
you.
me. You can't hear me. I can hear you.
You can hear me? Okay. I can't
Yeah.
hear your question. I don't know what is wrong. Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I don't know what has happened. Something has happened. Please go on, and then
Can
let me see if your voice comes through.
Can you hear me now?
Have you turned off your microphone? Have you turned off your microphone?
No. It's on.
I can't hear you.
Can you just log back in
A call
again?
came to me. Maybe that disrupted it.
Yeah. Can you log back in again?
What am I supposed to do?
Disconnect.
Okay,
and
disconnect and then join again?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Am I audible?
Are you able to hear me
Balaji?
now?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Go ahead.
What I was saying was that it is about Khadija was that it's a paradox that here we have Khadija, a successful businesswoman, and then there were other things that were happening. So I just want to end that particular aspect over there, because we have spoken about this earlier also, that how women can be their status can be lowered when Khadija's was such a successful businesswoman, independent, emancipated women. So anyway, I don't want to discuss on that particular aspect further. There was an interesting
It
article.
came. I can just say it briefly. It came after the, you could say, after the Quran was compiled. It came later. All these stories, which eventually became the Hadith, right? The Sunnah and the Sirah, they all traditions which came to us. The story of Aisha got twisted, and I think, as happens, Eve is still blamed for the downfall of Adam. वही हमारा भी है. Aisha venturing out got left behind. What is called as the affair of the necklace is
Yeah,
where
affair of the necklace.
everything starts diverging. If you want to hear the origin of Shiism, where it split, it starts
let's not
there.
let's not get into that. Let's not get into that. No, no, no,
Uh,
no. that
Nay,
that is also
I
the
mean,
same. That
it
incident also
all
led to the.
started after that. Women started getting blamed for it. Second class citizenship, जो हमारा इस्लाम में है, it all starts after that. That's why the two witness thing and the one witness thing, and they always bring in Aisha's this incident. कि देखो प्रॉफिट ने अगर उस पर ट्रस्ट नहीं किया होता and something like that. Like सीता जी के साथ भी, eventually she had to go through the Agni Pariksha. So I think it happens all across cultures that women are somehow to blame, right? It may not have originated initially, but eventually the men, especially the men who write the books, right, they eventually put the blame to women. Let me take this opportunity to say I am very proud of the fact that no woman has ever contributed a line to any religious book, and this is an achievement for women. I am very proud of the fact. Sometimes
I think some Hindu scholars may.
समटाइम्स आई गेट दिस फ्रॉम द हिंदूज कि नहीं नहीं वो उनका लोपमुद्रा का शायद डिबेट है, बट आई डोंट कंसिडर इट एज अ रिलीजियस टेक्स्ट. It's just a commentary or anything for me, but
Hinduism is
very
all about commentary.
very
No,
proud
no.
of the fact that not a single line has been contributed by a woman to a religious textbook.
Well, I think maybe in pagan times it might have been. Anyway, I'm going to come to the next thing. I think
Culture
this
was
whole.
all oral. Pagan culture was all oral. There was no written text.
No, even Greek culture. Anyway, I want to come to this thing. You had shared an article that in Britain a school teacher had to apologize, and the article was written by a Muslim who says why Western liberals are quiet on blasphemy and letting down Muslims. So
I don't think he
read
would
that.
like to be called as a Muslim writer. I think he's a friend,
No,
and he's one of the foremost Pakistani journalists. I don't think he would like to be called as a Muslim. But yes,
I
it's an excellent article. It's an excellent article.
it's an excellent article, and let's just say that if Balaji Subramanian is atheist and does not want to be called a Hindu, but people say Balaji Subramanian, oh Tamil, iska naam kya, wo to Tamil hai. So based
I
on
don't
that
think he would.
only, I'm not Muslim. I didn't say from a religious point of view. Just that its name is Islamic. So from that context, so so
He's
I
from
was going
Pakistan. He's from Pakistan. That is enough. His
that
writing, being a Pakistani, is enough. That's enough.
being Pakistan is being in Pakistan is quite a challenge itself. So I was going through that article, and in the in the West, the left has completely, washed their hands of reasoning. Now somehow it has become text over reasoning with the liberals, that anything we say is offensive, and especially it has to do with Islam, because they are still highly critical of Christianity. One does not have to talk about Hindus. You know what happened to Rashmi Sawant, that poor 22-year-old girl who was hounded by liberal left, and there was a Muslim faction also involved. It's a fact, but now the left liberals have completely have washed their hands of that, and I want to discuss on that particular article that there is already problems in Islam with Muslims who want to have their say, who want that freedom, and the left liberals are simply taking it away from them by siding with these people who want to impose Sharia.
I think the logic presented in the article was enough. What it says is that they demanded apologies for cartoons, and then eventually they are demanding apologies for even showing the cartoons in school or for teaching purposes. And we never know where it might end. Tomorrow they might say, "Please behead the teacher," just for even discussing anything. So that's the logic presented in the article. Where is it going to stop? So Britain has to stop appeasing it this. Britain has to stand. I have a friend, Madeline Cobb, and she's from Britain, and she laments the fact that Britain is lost. Britain has lost its original culture. Britain seems like a mini Pakistan everywhere, you know. And
I can vouch for that. I can vouch for that. I have been to that country
you've been, I've not
a
been.
couple
I've just heard
of
from the
times.
British friends.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I can give first-hand
lost.
information on that.
So even Birmingham is called a little Pakistan, Chota Pakistan, something like that. So
Yep.
they've lost that ground. Why you said it was colonial guilt? I say that it is cultural relativism that is there. It's taught in universities. All cultures are equal. They are not. Absolutely not. We still have barbaric cultures today, and Islam happens to be one of them. Islamic culture में थोड़े से जो regressive practices हैं वो बहुत ही ये हैं, they are uncivilized and barbaric. All cultures are not equal. And I feel that France is doing the right thing. Britain should have taken pointers from them. But unfortunately, this, even today, if something happens, I was listening to this podcast where Jordan Peterson is discussing with Ayan Hissi Ali about her new book, Prey, which tackles the immigration problem. And he was asking her, you have a lot of criticism about this book that you're making the Muslim predator be the most dangerous predator regarding sexual violence, right? So she talks about it, when I went around researching and calling up the justice departments of all the countries, what they had done is they had, recorded the crimes, but they hesitated on recording the race and ethnicity of the perpetrator, and they would only tell her in confidentiality the race and the ethnicity. Official record में कहीं पे नहीं लिखा जाता था, because they're always scared of being termed as racist. If you hear incidents where terror attacks happen, I remember the Rigby beheading. I remember that poor
Lee
boy
Rigby. Lee Rigby.
Lee. He was a drummer, I think, in and he was just returning home or something. And this again, the apologists came up on threads and all, and they were saying brought up all sorts of apologies. Brought up not talking about the fact that this person was beheaded in broad daylight, bringing up certain excuses for the person being mentally disturbed, bringing excuses for the fact that he's from a poor country, may have migrated. All these apologies that she talks about. So she's saying
I'll give a very recent
they are
example
they
actually.
are
Arshia,
British are the
I'll give you a
British
very
are
recent
culturally
example.
conditioned. The British are culturally conditioned into not being racist, and for them, not being racist means you are never ever going to focus on the race or the ethnicity of the crime. Jabki statistics show most of them are from Muslim countries, Sudan and Ethiopia and Pakistan, and we know about the grooming gang scandal and everything. Rotterdam.
I actually wrote an article on that. Actually, I wrote an article for Sima Mag on the entire grooming gang thing. And if let's talk about recent, what happened last week in America, in Boulder, Colorado. This guy goes, he looks Caucasian, completely, a white man, KKK. Everyone thought that he was a member of the Ku Klux Klan, the white supremacist organization in America. And the moment the name appeared, I'm forgetting his name. It's a Syrian name, a very classic Arabic name. Moment that name appeared, there was absolute silence, and suddenly the whole, he was bullied in school, and mental illness, gun is the problem, not the people, and they actually tried to sanitize his social media page where he had apparently written, "Oh, I need a girlfriend." 21-year-old boy, fine. That is nothing wrong in that. But then he had also mentioned few other things which can be considered by the authorities as controversial, and he was on the FBI's radar. Now, I don't want to go into that, but I want to talk about the media, the left, who are the, enhancers, like trying to hide the crime and in the guise of political correctness, they are actually, but destroying themselves. That's what I feel. That it's happening in America. It is happening. It's happened in Britain. And on that Rotherham case, I'll forward you that article that I wrote. They said that if we go and charge them, they will say that no, you are being a racist. And there was this particular thing that struck me, that a 13-year-old girl was running naked, and the explanation was that, look, she's a drug addict, so if we do something
I
bad
know.
with her, it's nothing wrong in that. So
Asking for it.
30, 13 asking for it was 13. I basically have my own thoughts on that why these things happen in UK, because in UK the entire family structure started to collapse, and there have been instances where a 15-16-year-old girl will bring her boyfriend to her home for the night, and they will be in the same room. So that kind of parental control they have started to lose, and that has led to a lot of people who can be easily
I
be
don't agree. I don't agree. I don't agree because France is a much more open society. France is a much more open about this. Paris is called the city of love. I don't agree with this that the family structure is breaking. France में भी इतना कुछ होता है. They are built on that free society and everything. But France is
France and
taking
Britain are
steps.
different countries. France and Britain
They
are different
are,
countries, that
they
they
are,
have
but
different
the
cultures
culture,
also.
the freer culture is there too. I mean, you can't say कि if Britain is this because the family structure is breaking, right? Balaji, you're
I'm still
offline.
there. I'm still there. I'm still there.
Right,
Electricity.
right,
So my
right.
internet is working, but electricity is gone.
I just want to say to this, what you summarized all of this, which is happening in these countries. I don't understand what the left is trying to achieve or what the liberals want to do, because eventually, if you keep denying things, one day it will explode like a volcano. If you keep brushing these things under the carpet, and that's what Ayan Hirsi Ali has been pointing out too. I mean, कब तक आप लोग उस lady को ये criticism करते रहेंगे? I don't like the fact that Maryam Namazi, she used to be one of my inspirations, atheist, and bringing a lot of freedom of thought to Islamic culture. I am astounded by the fact today she is against Ayan for her book Pray. Why? I mean, she is stating facts. She's brought up statistics too. Why would you not agree to the fact that the Muslim predator is one of the dangerous ones? Because he's getting religious sanction for it. Somehow, वो twisted interpretations उसके mind में चली गई हैं कि women are, to be, you can't go to heaven unless you look at Khomeini's ideology. Women prisoners in Evin, most notorious prison in Evin prison, are
They are
raped if
raped
they are
first.
unmarried, so that they can go to
Otherwise,
heaven. I mean,
hell. No,
look
no.
at the ideology, and ये
So that
कहाँ
they
से
can go
आया
to
है,
hell.
right?
No, so they are raped
They
so
can go
that they can go to hell, not
hell,
heaven.
right? So, I mean, think of it. And you're standing up against this woman. How long are you going to brush it off? How long are you going to deny it? Because eventually, one day, it's going to cascade. या फिर ये हो जाएगा, the right will become hardened. वो अपना stance harden कर देंगे, and then there will be no bridges. जैसे इंडिया में हो रहा है, right? Look at the wonderful work that Swati is doing. Swati Goyal Sharma, she's bringing up these cases जहाँ mainstream media बिल्कुल नहीं जाती है, and she's got proof. She's interviewing them. She's bringing up these cases, and चलो वो Op India या स्वराज्य में छपता है, and you can only label them as right wing portals. ये सब क्या है? Why don't you go to the fact that जिसको वो interview कर रही है वो बता रहा है भाई ऐसे ऐसे? Why don't you counter that, or why don't you go and report it the way she's doing it, right? So this selectiveness कब तक चलेगा? Eventually, the right is going to harden its stance. Then what do you do, right? When eventually a certain section of the British population is going to rebel against the government, saying that they are not taking care of the daughters, what is the Labour Party going to do? What is the government going to do?
They already have. They already have.
A tipping point will come. It will come.
No, no.
Like it happened in the Muslim culture. A tipping point came. You denied it and kept saying there is no problem in Islam. There is no problem in Islam. Of course, you beheaded, you stabbed, you attacked, you killed, honor killing. What happened then? Technology came, and now they are moving away from Islam in thousands. There is a underground revolution in the Middle East. They know they will be killed for it, so hence it's underground, but it's happening. How do
but
you
it will
stop
come
it?
out. I have a
It will
question
come
on.
out eventually.
I have.
Eventually.
I have a question on this for you. Again, it is very hypothetical. As I said, earlier in our conversation that back in the 12th century or the 10th century, a guy like Ibn Rashid and all those other people who had different ideas, who said reason over text, they were deemed as heretics, but I would call them as reformers. I think it's a slow fuse. They lit the fuse. And I will make one observation here for you, that the reform in Christianity also didn't happen that quickly. It's been 1400 years since it's been 1400 years since Islam was established, 1400 years ago, give or take few years here and there. Now Christianity happened 2000 years ago. It took Christianity 300 years to establish itself in Rome.
Yes.
And then and then everything went dark for the next say 1000 years. After Dante Alighieri wrote the Inferno, and then the
Paradise Lost.
And everything started coming. There was a renaissance.
Well, it took them 500 years to accept that the Earth was not the center of the universe. It took them 500 years to accept it.
Around 1850. So I believe that since it has taken that amount of time, the only difference between Islam and Christianity is that Islam expanded exponentially in first 200 years. It was massive, from Spain to north of India. In 250 years, it completely expanded. Christianity, it took 300 years because the Romans were very, very powerful. But finally, when they established, it all went dark. And in that 250-year period, there was a period of 100 years maybe where there was reason over text. And then it was destroyed. And after that, nothing. I think from 1250 to 1300 onwards.
We call it intellectual suicide. Intellectual suicide was committed.
So I feel that the fuse that was lit, say 800 or 1000 years ago by these Mutazilites and all that, it's a slow fuse. It's a slow fuse which is now reaching its crescendo, and it is going to explode. And I feel that Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, there is going to be problem there, and they're going to feel left out. They're going to have some Muslims in this area are going to have identity crisis, because
I don't believe that.
Arabs are going to.
I don't believe that.
Let me complete. I think Arabs may move towards reason over text eventually. Again, this is a hypothesis. I'm not saying that I am right. I will never say that.
You're right, but you're saying it in the backward way. You're right. It's to happen in the Middle East, first of all. And these countries that you mentioned, which is in totality the subcontinent, they always love to copy the Arabs. So you're right in that way. Once it happens in the Middle East, they are going to definitely change. But it will be a copied thing. It won't be something which will come out of them, which is what I tend to do. It has to be reformed from the inside. It can't happen just because the Arabs are doing it, right?
My theory is that I can give my reasonings for what happened in the past. I can't say that this is what will happen. So to me, it is not a theory, it is a hypothesis that Muslims from Pakistan to Bangladesh, if I take the entire area, may have identity crisis because the Arabs are changing. One reason behind that, as far as I believe, why the Arabs are changing, I'm talking about the UAE and the Arab Peninsula, why they are changing is that climate change. They have come to a realization that, look, oil money is going to go away. It is a hypothesis. Again, hypothesis. Yeah, I'm not saying that I'm absolutely...
My friend Arti says that they've realized that the oil is running out. Okay, and they have also realized the fact that now the new world order is not going to accept the fact of exclusivity and secessionism and ये सब. So Arti Tikku Singh is right in this matter, that they have started to realize coexistence is what will develop into prosperity, because the oil is running out. The oil is running out.
Oil is actually not running out. There is still plenty of oil. The point is that the technology is evolving.
But then
we are moving towards a different kind of technology.
The power that they had wielded in exporting the oil, that has all changed. America is getting more and more independent in a way. They are finding their own oil wells now, whether they invade a country for that or whether they find their own oil in their own seas. But people, even we are starting to think about sustainable development. We want to cut down on our dependence on petrol and oil. We also have started to think that we may be a little bit late. It may take us 30-40 years, but eventually we'll come up with something, Atmanirbharta. The oil
I'm like
is
4G. No, no.
oil is running out.
I
Fossil
have my
fossil fuels do not last. Fossil
no, no.
fuels do not
I
last.
have my doubts. I have my doubts on that. But just that the technology is changing. So I believe that based on that, Mohammed bin Salman is doing some reforms in a very, what do you call, in a manner that does not bring a huge, massive social upheaval. He's taking it slowly, gradually, which is the right thing to do. And I think eventually, maybe we are of practically of same age. Maybe in another 25 years, we will see a massive change where Islam had originated, and that will have an impact in our entire, say, from Pakistan to Bangladesh.
I
And
I am the
for me,
ever
it may be
skeptic.
an identity crisis. For you, you may say that they may start imitating them.
I
I
am the ever skeptic. I hope MBS's reform are not cosmetic changes. I hope they are not cosmetic changes. I am the ever skeptic, even if I see changes. But I mean, what you're saying officially, officially, yes, they've allowed women to drive. Yes, Saudi women do not require a male escort, with them, a parent or somebody. But I hope it's as you said correctly, he's going about it in a very good way. Speed अच्छी है,
gradual.
gradual change, but I hope it's not cosmetic only. And the only thing
No, no,
real
no.
I saw was their extension of friendship to Israel. That's something
Yep.
very, very romantic for me. But I am the ever skeptic in matters relating to Muslims or Islam. I am the ever skeptic. Let's
I'll
see.
give you.
Let's see.
I'll give you another
Let's
example.
see.
Okay? I'll
Let's
ask you
see.
one question. What scares the Ayatollah more than nuclear bomb, America attacking? Just there is one thing that scares the hell out of
It's.
the Ayatollahs in Iran. Just one thing. They're not afraid of America dropping nuclear bomb or attacking them. Just one thing they're afraid of. It's the
I think it's
hijab.
their own people. It's their own
No,
people.
no. It's the hijab. Just remove that. For them, that is the ultimate threat. Just imagine a
Yeah,
piece
but
of
then the
cloth.
yes,
If you
but
just
then the
remove it,
person
for them,
who's
it's
removing it
gone.
is using reasoning, right? The person who's removing it is using reasoning, and that's what they fear. They fear their own people. They fear their own people because Iran has had that amazing, amazing period, before the 1975 revolution.
I would say that is also wrong
79, sorry.
because the Shah, I wouldn't call Shah a reformer in any sense. I'm
No,
sorry.
it has its own problems. He
The
had his
only
own problems.
no,
Yeah,
no, the
of
only
course.
reformer
I mean,
was
every
that
person.
prime minister who got
Saddam
overthrown.
managed to rein in certain these all these ISIL types, but then he was gassing his own people as well, the Kurds also. Every state figure has this
Saddam was
problem.
not a
Gandhi,
Muslim. Saddam was not a
yeah,
Muslim.
but then
He only believed in power.
every state
He
figure
only
has
believed in
this problem.
power. No.
Yeah,
Saddam
every
Hussein was
state has
not
this
a
problem. See, even
Saddam.
Ataturk, for that example, let me tell you Turkey's example. Ataturk is considered to be as the father of modern Turkey, and he completely abolished the caliphate and all. For a long period of time, there were all praises of him. Even I grew up, what is known as Kemalism, तो बड़ा मेरे को पॉजिटिव उसका ये था कि एकदम से खत्म कर दिया ये तो बहुत अच्छा है अगर बुर्का भी इसी तरह ऐसे ही बैन हो जाए लेकिन then I read Mustafa Iqbal. This was secularism with guns. Mustafa Iqbal's parents were killed. His father was executed in a secular prison by secular guns of Ataturk. Right? You can't enforce secularism. Also, that is not the way. Look again. Turkey is back where it was. What happened to all those 70 years? I think more than 100 years. Right? So
You said
secularism reasoning has to come from the inside.
no.
That's
You are
why the
absolutely
Western
right.
Renaissance. That's why the Western Renaissance still, it's there and it's increasing. It's not gone down ever. It has
No,
to come from the inside. It
no.
has to
You
come
are
from the
right
inside.
when you write
I
that when you
use
said
it
that.
for Kashmir as well. I use it for Kashmir as well. Okay, we nullified the Article 370. Fine, we are settling down. People are accepting the fact. But unless and until it happens from the inside, they start believing our future lies with the subcontinent. Things will not change. The Tehreek will be back in the next 70 years.
I'm glad you brought
Considering
Kashmir. I'm glad you brought Kashmir
yes,
because there was this
yes,
article.
it has to. The acceptance has to come from the inside.
No. I'm glad you brought Kashmir because I think there was this article also that finally, the time may have come that practically 2.5 generations. As I say, 2.5 generation because has started for 30 years. So I will say 2.5 generation have been affected because of many things. I don't want to talk about that, but there was you had only shared that finally the young people, the young Kashmiris, will now have the chance. I read it a while back. So again, it was again based on the concept of reason over text, and that
Are
finally
you talking about
sanity.
my are you talking about my Heartland Analyst article? Are you talking about Kashmir, reviving Kashmir, right? Bringing Kashmir back alive?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, and again,
I
reasoning might again come back, and sanity will prevail, and these kids.
what the state is doing is it's engaging the youth in sports and cultural activities. Fine, no problems with that. Lekin unless and until you bring up critical thinking in schools and colleges and living rooms, this Tehreek is going to be back in the next 70 years. It has to come from the inside. Critical thinking develop करना पड़ेगा. वो जो narrative इनको feed कर दिया गया है for the last 30 years, तीन generations को, क्योंकि अभी भी एक और generation है, you can't say it's a half generation, except it's not dying now, but there's a third generation which has been brought up on this narrative. So unless and until critical thinking is developed and the youth are given that space to have those debates and those ideas, engaging them in sports and cultural activities is not going to help eventually. That's what the article was about. And this is coming on the ground from one of my boys living in the most deadliest towns. He's a young man and he said कि आप मुझे दीदी बताओ कि आप अगर किसी बच्चे को स्पोर्ट्स में डाल रहे हो, वो फिल्म एक्टिंग के लिए जा रहा है, वो मॉडलिंग कर रहा है, वो सब कुछ कर रहा है, लेकिन आपने उसका वो जो मॉस्क में जाता है या वो इतने सारे वो जाकिर नाइक के वो देखता है, आप वो रेडिकलिज्म को आप रीजन आउट नहीं कर पाएंगे, तो वो कभी भी किसी भी टाइम पे वो रेडिकलिज्म की तरफ जा सकता है. आई मीन अता मोहम्मद द 9/11 main
Mohammad
mastermind
Atta,
was also educated, right? And then you have Daniel Pearl's killer, Umar Saeed Sheikh, I think. Again,
London School of
Baghdadi
Economics.
is a PhD. Baghdadi is a PhD. And that Manaf person from Kashmir University was a mathematician, I think, as far as I've heard. So
Two
he's
days,
right. He said,
2 days back,
sports and cultural activities में engage करने से सब ठीक है, लेकिन critical reasoning कब आएगी? Critical reasoning colleges में, schools में, streets पे, that critical thinking has to come up, right?
Fine. I want to end this. I want to end this because, as I said, again, it's wonderful that I may agree with you on certain things and I may disagree with you on certain things. You may agree with me on certain things. You
That's
may
the
disagree
point.
with certain
That's the
things.
point. We
So
can agree
we
to
need
disagree
to,
and still be
yeah,
friends. Yes,
in a,
that's
in
the
a, in a
point.
civilized manner and not
In a civilized
grabbing each
manner.
other's throat. So I'm going to finally
Yes.
end this debate. Well, I shouldn't say debate. I'm the one who's interviewing you. You're the one who with the answers.
I think it was a debate. I disagreed with
I
you
think
on a lot of
it turned
things.
into a debate. It certainly turned into a debate, actually, of two friends, they're having different views on some things, but the destination is the same, which is progress and peace. Anyway, I want to end this with Basim Rizvi. He he has his rights to expunge
Absolutely. He
those
has the
26
rights to say.
verses. Very, very
Yes.
controversial. In fact, there are more than that. There is that famous Sitaram Goyal book on that. I think 126 verses. You had said that even if it is expunged, it doesn't matter because it's there available in the internet. I don't want to go into that. It is already out there in the public. People know about
Not
that.
just that.
One
Not
way
just
or the
that.
other, one people have heard. One way or the other,
Not
look,
just
they're
that.
smart
Not,
enough
no,
to
no,
get.
no, 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 no. My point was, even if it is expunged, which the people will eventually find, that's not the point. The point is, ki, again, as I said, it has to come from the inside. If you're giving a censored book for them to read, I would say a sanitized book for them to read, how will they ever develop the critical thinking skills? How will they even, because you see, doubt starts when person starts reading the translation, and there are many intelligent people all over the world who start questioning. If you've expunged that what you call the violent verse, how will that person eventually know that it's a complete compilation which has peaceful verses and which has violent verses, right?
But according to
We are
Rizvi, no, if I
talking
may,
about an idea which may have its pros and cons, which may have its flaws and its good things. I don't believe in expunging or censorship. This is the reason I don't believe in banning books.
no,
But then it
absolutely.
has to be open for all. That's freedom of expression. You can't
I mean,
expunge an idea out. You
there
can't
is this book called,
sanitize it and give it to people. That's what's been happening. These children, these academic youth, which are there in campuses all over the world these days, they have been brought up in a bubble world. Everything was sanitized for them, right? यही जो आप कह रहे हैं कि उसकी एथनिसिटी पे मत जाइए, रेसिज्म पे मत जाइए, ऑल कल्चर्स आर इक्वल, ये सब सैनिटाइजेशन नहीं है तो और क्या है? So then you have these what you call the woke people today, the woke youth in academia today, who don't even want to venture out into these dangerous areas. There is a possibility the Muslim predator might be the dangerous one. They don't even want to even think of this possibility. It's very easy to dismiss Ayan, that she's a bigot or something. लेकिन वो problem है, उसका आप क्या करोगे? What will you do? The problem is there.
For
right?
the Vokes, I have this. For the Vokes, I have this theory. I support you, but I just don't want you in my neighborhood.
I think it's completely opposite to Benjamin Franklin's quote. Ki I will support. I may not agree with you, but I will defend your right to
defend your right.
Speak it.
So,
with my life.
Yeah. So I support you, but please don't come to my neighborhood.
Very interesting.
So, anyway, as I said, Wasim Rizvi. But then there is again.
He has his rights. He has his rights to say it.
What he's saying is what.
I don't support the fatwa against him, or I don't support this this bounty on his head. He had his right. He said it. Instead of making it, I don't think it was such a big deal. All you had to do was say it's there. The complete set of it is there, and you reason it out. You agree to the fact that there are violent verses.
No, but what he says is that these were inserted later on.
No, and, a lot of things were inserted later because a lot of things changed because there was no punctuation in classical Arabic. A lot of things change eventually when translators start writing it down. I mean, anything that is compiled, there will always be problems with it, and especially something which has been compiled long after the Prophet's death. Muslims today say no. Immediately the first Caliph did it. But no, there were compilations, and Uthman's manuscript is the one. I've talked about this before also, which is today circulated. But there were other apocryphal ones which were burnt. Some of them might have survived. That is where we come up with the Sana document. There is another document which has come up as archaeologically is the Birmingham manuscript. So you will have these manuscripts popping up all over the world. Even in this Egyptian Coptic churches, there are leaves of the Quran which are completely different from what we have here. But उस area में जाएगा कौन? जो गया है वो Western ही author researcher गया है. वो अपनी थ्योरी या अपना रिसर्च बहुत ही ऐसी सेफ कंट्री में पब्लिश करता है जैसे फ्रांस में, जहां उसको कोई कुछ कहेगा नहीं. Like I've told this before also. If Muslims, padega bhi nahi. If Muslims come to know what all is being researched by Western authors and researchers, they will be writing in India and Bangladesh and Pakistan. They don't know what all research is happening. Archaeology. Ab to Saudi ne bhi, government ne bhi allow kar diya hai. Israeli teams go there. They've started digging there and they're finding evidence and they're finding a lot of things which are going to contradict a lot of stories in Islam, right? लेकिन वही बात है. वसीम रिजवी साहब ने अपना कह दिया, it was his right. लेकिन you also, what you could do was, what you could ask him is that you are from the Shia sect, right? There are problematic verses in the Shia version of the Quran as well. Are you going to expunge them too? That's the first question my Pakistani friend said. Is he going to expunge them too? क्योंकि है, differences हैं, right?
But what I think is that he has...
It should have come from the Sunnis. It should have come from the Sunnis because majority is Sunnis. First of all, nobody's going to take a Shia seriously.
Secondly, that is not going to happen.
They are not going to take him seriously.
But what I feel is that
they made it into a serious matter. जो करना ही नहीं था. He had said it, fine. All you could do was start debates whether there are violent verses or not. You could have started national debates on that. You could have brought in non-Muslims as well, who are very knowledgeable about the Quran. You could have brought in Muslims as well, who are going into areas where, it's considered to be blasphemy. ये हो सकता था, लेकिन आपने एक अपॉर्चुनिटी को एक वो ड्रामा बना दिया जो यूजुअली हमारे सब कॉन्टिनेंट में होता है. Like the Rusty affair was there. We were the first country to ban the book because we didn't want riots. We were appeasing the Muslims. I don't know why we were the first country to ban it. And so this is it.
Never mind Rushdie.
Tried to say it, but there shouldn't be any fatwa over it. They could have used this opportunity to start a national debate on the book itself.
The most unfortunate thing for me is, let's just say the ignorance, the bigotry that comes from Muslims. For me, the most unfortunate thing is that the ignorance and bigotry that is coming from the government, from the left.
Yes.
In fact, I would even blame the BJP on this.
Yes.
That they should have said that, look, this matter is in the court, and
Agreed.
since it is sub judice, as a political party, we're not going to make any say in that. But
Yes.
then there are political compulsions. Political
Yes.
compulsions always
I agree. I agree. They should
trump
have
your
put the. This was
morality.
their opportunity. This was their opportunity.
Opportunity to say that, look, we are not saying that he's right, we are not saying that he's wrong, it's in the court, let the court decide. But then political, as I again I'll say, politics always trumps moral stand of righteousness, because
This Shabano
you have to win the
case.
vote. Shabano case, and Arif Muhammad Khan, I still, he's a reformer. For me, he is a reformer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And
Great.
often
Great.
reformers fail. Often their ideas are never implemented, or
Take this
in their time.
opportunity for. I'm going to take this opportunity for your viewers to remind your viewers that there is a wonderful discussion between Arfa Khanum Sherwani and
Yes,
Arif Khan. Please do share it on your channel. Please do, and
he
bring
took
somebody
her
to
to school.
analyze. That's a
He took her to
wonderful
school.
thing. I mean,
He took her to school.
great man to take her on. I would not have been able to do that because I don't tolerate stupidity. I don't tolerate intolerance. I don't do that. I will never have a debate with her. But great man that he chose to go into that area. Wonderful. So
He's intellectually, morally superior in his
some
arguments. So it is not going to happen.
moral compass. His moral
Plus
compass
he's
is very straight. Very right.
Anyway, this was supposed to be only 50 minutes. We have exceeded to 20 minutes. Instead of me being the interviewer, I became the debater. I suppose it's a
Excellent.
learning
I
for
love
me.
it. And
It's
Balaji,
a
let me tell
learning.
you one thing. I love your curiosity. I am, very, very honored to be in the company of you. I love a curious mind for me. And thank you.
So,
Thank you so much for inviting
no,
me. I mean, I
no,
love
my pleasure.
it.
My pleasure. So,
It tests me also. It challenges me also. I will sit and think about certain things that you said. I'm going to re-evaluate certain ideas of mine, certain conclusions of mine. So I love this. Please continue.
I'm
And
going to
you're doing
say
wonderful work. I saw some of your earlier interviews also. Wonderful work, sir. Wonderful work.
thank you very much. I'm going to conclude this by saying that there have been reformers in Islam who were called heretics, and all reformers, one way or the other, are called heretics unless and until their thinking prevails. So I think the likes of Averroes, Ibn Rashid, he lit a fuse
Need to be need
thousand
to be
years
brought
ago.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he lit a fuse 1,000 years ago, and I think that fuse is now out in the open. You can actually see the fire burning, and I believe there will be more voices that will come out without fear, or
Technology.
without the threat of,
Technology did it.
without reprisal.
Technology.
And social media,
Technology.
it's a double-edged sword.
Social
It's a
media.
double-edged sword.
Fastened it. Fastened
it's,
it.
it's a double-edged sword, but I believe that the time has come that I think a lot of Muslims will uh, raise their voice, and they will go back to reason over text. And when that happens, I think many of the problems that we face in our society would automatically subside. So, Arshia Malik,
Fingers
thank you
crossed.
very much. We turned this. This was an interview, but I turned it into a debate somehow. Uh,
Wonderful.
it was most fun. Thank you very much for coming on Bharat Vichar, and we will again discuss something else next time. Thank you so much.
Thank you.